There comes a point in life when you realize something important has changed, not around you, but inside you. It doesn't arrive with a warning. No milestone birthday, no dramatic event that forces the issue. You just start to notice that time doesn't feel the same anymore. Weeks move faster than you expect. A month passes, and you can't quite say what you did with it. You catch yourself saying, "I can't believe it's already," more often than you used to. It's not panic, it's awareness. A quiet sense that time is no longer something you spend casually. It has weight now, and you feel it even on ordinary days. That awareness often brings questions people have avoided for years. Am I using my time well? Am I actually present for my life? Or have I been moving from one obligation to the next, assuming I'll slow down later when things finally calm down? I've spent years listening to older people talk about their lives, not in formal interviews, but in ordinary conversations. Sitting at kitchen tables long after the dishes were cleared. Walking slowly through neighborhoods where memories seem to live in the walls. Talking during moments when there's nothing left to prove. And the surprising thing is this: they don't talk much about success. They rarely bring up their careers unless they're explaining why they missed something that mattered. They don't reminisce about money or possessions. They don't measure their lives by how busy they were or how full their schedules looked. They talk about people. They talk about moments they almost skipped. They talk about time, especially the way it slipped past quietly, without asking permission. Many of them admit they spent a large part of their lives believing that real living would begin later. After things settled down, after responsibilities eased, after they reached some invisible finish line that always seemed just a little farther away. So they waited. Waiting often looks responsible on the surface. It sounds mature and sensible. You tell yourself you're being disciplined, that you're delaying gratification for good reasons. You convince yourself this is just a season, and that patience will eventually be rewarded. But over time, the line between patience and avoidance becomes harder to see. Days turn into routines. Routines turn into years. And suddenly, the life you were preparing for feels strangely unfamiliar when you finally stop to look at it. I once knew someone who lived almost entirely in the future. Everything was about what he would do once he reached his goal. He had plans stacked neatly on top of plans. He believed discipline and sacrifice would eventually buy him freedom. What he didn't realize was that life was happening while he was busy preparing for it, and it wasn't waiting for him to catch up. When he was gone, something became painfully clear. The world kept moving. Meetings continued. Emails were answered. Projects stayed on schedule. People adapted more quickly than anyone expected. That realization can feel unsettling at first, but it's also clarifying. It forces you to ask whether you've been living for systems that won't remember you, or for people and moments that will. That's why building your entire identity around productivity is risky. Work has value. Responsibility matters, but when your sense of worth depends only on what you produce, you risk waking up one day unsure of who you are without it. Jobs change, roles end, titles disappear, and when that happens, you're left facing yourself without the labels. As people age, many also begin to see material things differently, not with resentment, but with honesty. They realize how temporary it all is. Homes change hands. Objects lose relevance. Things that once felt essential quietly become clutter. What remains isn't what you owned or accumulated. It's how you showed up, the tone of your voice in difficult moments, whether you made time when it would have been easier not to, whether people felt safe, seen, or rushed when they were with you. One of the most common regrets people express later in life isn't that they failed. It's that they were distracted, not intentionally, not carelessly, just gradually. A phone check during conversations, work brought home at night, worry carried into moments that deserved lightness. None of it felt dramatic at the time, but added together, those small absences quietly shaped how life was experienced. As you get older, another realization sets in, and it can be surprisingly freeing. Most people are not paying close attention to you. They're focused on their own worries, their own unfinished business. The fear of being judged, of looking foolish, of not measuring up. It loses its grip when you realize how little space you actually occupy in other people's minds. That fear keeps people quiet when they should speak, careful when they should act. It convinces them to postpone joy and honesty until some safer moment arrives. Later in life, many wish they had taken more chances when the cost of failure was low and the cost of regret was high. There's a simple idea older people often return to, not as philosophy, but as lived experience. Treat ordinary moments with care, not because they're extraordinary, but because they're limited. At some point, familiar things stop being guaranteed. The drive you've taken 100 times, the familiar voice on the phone, the body that still moves without complaint. You don't miss these things while you have them. You miss them when they quietly disappear. When you live with that awareness, something shifts. You stop rushing through conversations. You listen more closely. You forgive sooner. Forgiveness begins to matter more. Not because the past didn't hurt, but because carrying resentment takes energy you no longer want to waste. Holding on to old bitterness doesn't punish the past. It steals attention from the present, and attention becomes precious. If any part of this feels familiar, that's not a coincidence. These realizations don't belong to one age or one kind of life. They arrive whenever someone slows down enough to notice what's been quietly happening all along. If you're listening to this and you're still willing to reflect, still willing to question how you're living, that matters more than you might think. It means you're paying attention. You don't need to reinvent your life or make dramatic changes. Often, the most meaningful shifts are small. Calling someone you've been meaning to call, staying present a little longer, letting go of the idea that life will start later. Before we close, I want to say thank you. Thank you for giving this time and attention. Thank you for being willing to slow down long enough to reflect. That willingness is something many people never develop. If this stirred a memory or a realization, I invite you to share it in the comments. Not for attention, but because your experience might help someone else feel less alone in theirs. Take care of yourself. Be mindful of how you spend your days, and don't let your life pass quietly by.